We all use social media, various forms and many types of social media, and we all have a general understanding of what it is and what it does. But in this video, we're going to explore a little bit more about what it means in marketing terms and how we can classify different types of social media and how that has implications for us as marketers. So the Wikipedia page for social media is actually quite informative. And I like the way that the page has been edited to say that social media is a way that to use digitally mediated technologies to facilitate creation and sharing and exchange of information and ideas, which is really at the core of what social media is. So it really, like, for you to call it social media, it has to be related to creating content and sharing and exchanging of that content. So it's what we used to call Web 2.0. Well, now we're talking about Web 3, 4, 5, and 6.0. So that term is a bit redundant in this sense, but further on this page also it gives a lot of examples of different types of social media, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Now, Tracy Tooten gives a fairly good overview of how we can classify different social media platforms in her 2018 social media marketing book. So dividing it up to social community, social publishing, social commerce, and social entertainment. So let's have a look at these four categories in a bit more detail. Firstly, social community sites are sites that are based on building and maintaining relationships amongst people that have common interest or have stuff in common. So, for example, in this course we use Facebook and we use LinkedIn to stay up to date and to keep everyone studying in this course connected. Now, social publishing platforms are slightly different because they are based on more they're more centered on the person creating the content. So like YouTube, for example, being an example there, the video that you're watching now, for example, is published on YouTube because I create the content and I put it on there for you to watch, and then we can have a discussion in class at a later stage. So it's more a channel for disseminating content. So when you are doing your assignment 1, you need to think about to what extent you want to disseminate content. So when you build your strategic or decide on your strategic implementations, do you want to disseminate and publish content, or do you want to have an ongoing dialogue and a relationship with your audiences? And that should help you guide which type of these platforms you should use. Now, social commerce channels are again quite different from the other categories we discussed above, because they really have to do with facilitating commercial transactions, and it is a super great idea to keep these separated so that you don't talk about facilitating commercial or asking people to buy stuff if the consumers and the buyer are in a different space and are not really interested in making purchases. They just want to have communications with you. So there's some examples of that up here as well. But I think Facebook, especially Facebook Marketplace, but also TripAdvisor or other types of rating pages. Even now you rate most things on Google as well, especially on Google Maps, and these are spaces for social interactions. So it's still social media, but it has to do with commercial exchange, and it's good practice to keep those separate. Now, the final category is social entertainment platforms. And using those type of platforms means you produce content for entertainment purposes only. So any type of sales pitches really should not be featured on those type of channels, because they are purely focused on entertainment. So gaming sites is a typical example of that. Now, you may look at the examples here, Second Life, MySpace, and say, well, perhaps they are a little bit outdated. But hey, there's a good opportunity for you to write a blog post about what are the contemporary social entertainment platforms that you can use for social entertainment purposes, where you should really keep commerce out of it. So that could be a really good thing to blog about. Now, I know Tracy Tootin got her idea of her classification of different types of social media from Kaplan and Heinlein's super classic article where they classified the different types of social media based on how rich the media is, and also like versus the level of self-presentation or disclosure of the person behind it. And these things really matter. So let me just quickly go through this. So when we talk about self-presentation or self-disclosure, it's really about on this platform, in this social media, how much does it matter who's producing the content? Is it about the person producing the content, or is it about the content in itself? So on Wikipedia, for example, it's about the content, and so is it quite often on YouTube. Although we'll see some variations to that, but mainly it's about what content is being produced. While when the self-presentation or disclosure is high, then it's more about the person producing it. So in a blog, like in your personal blogs in this course, for example, who you are and your opinions becomes then more important. And when the media richness or the social presence is higher, which means that it's more current, it's more happening right now, using more multimedia resources, then so in social networking sites, for example, such as Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, it's what the content that's being produced is very much about the producer, and it's also very much about using more or richer types of media in producing that. So when you decide on what platform to use for your assignment one, if you're going to suggest doing implementations using social media, you need to think about what type of content am I producing? Does it require a high level of disclosure or presentation? Is it really about the business or you presenting the content, or is it more about the nature of the content itself? And that should help you guide what type of platform you should use. So in terms of how to operate on social media, there are some key areas or some key observations that were discovered quite a while ago, but people are still making mistakes in these areas. So let's look at these as part of the additional readings for this week. So let's look at these 4 categories about like learnings from early travelers on social media. To a very large extent, the old way of thinking about community engagement is about engaging the community on your terms. So you provide them to the community as a business, and then people will engage with you. But on social media, it's the consumer space. So you need to use their language and communication. So you need to sit there and observe how the platform works before you use it, and then communicate accordingly. And it's also really good practice to be personal rather than use formal business language. And there's always businesses that gets this really wrong, and no one pays attention because they use language that are way too formal. Another thing that's super important to always keep in mind that it's immediate and it requires 24/7 availability. So before you even open a channel on social media, you need to think about, well, if you are there, then people expect you to respond immediately. Like, let's say, for example, that I opened a WhatsApp group for this course. You would be messaging me on there 24/7 because, well, it's WhatsApp. I'm communicating with my friends on there all the time. And so I would expect the course coordinator to be there all the time as well, which is part of the reason why I'm not opening a WhatsApp group for this course. And also, this is no place for press releases and corporate websites. So now we're talking about like social networking sites in particular. If you want to produce press releases, corporate websites, then a blog may be a better forum for that than a social networking site. Now, for organizations, small or large, social media can be used for a whole range of different purposes. So even if you're working for a small business, as you may well do in assignment 1 and 2, it may be, if it hasn't been established already, to develop a social media channel through Signal or Telegram or WhatsApp for internal communication as well between staff members. But to move this to a strategic level, it really should be bottom up. It should be based on the needs of the people working in the business rather than being top down. But what is important as well for platforms that are available and visible to the public is that you develop a consistent voice, so that if you have various social medias across different platforms, then it shouldn't matter which platform consumers are connecting to. They should be receiving the same message and have a consistency in the communication you provide. Now, this is a point that we keep coming back to again and again and again and again. Social media and social media marketing, it is not free. Yes, it's free to set up a Facebook account, but it takes an enormous amount of time and effort to create valuable content on that platform. Someone's got to sit there and do that shit, and it's not free. Their time is valuable, and they need to be consistently involved in order to make an impact and to make an effort or to make or to create value for the consumers rather. And it requires more input and effort than most organizations anticipate. So when you consult a small business, you really need to put this in perspective and keep this in mind. So you cannot suggest that this small business should produce and create an enormous amount of content when they have a finite amount of resources. And it's also the expectation from consumers that when you're on this channel, you will be available 24/7. So you need to make sure that someone is there to respond to inquiries when they pop up, when you open up a channel. Now, Kaplan and Heelan also in their article give some advice for companies that are using social media, and I think like the first one there is about choosing carefully. So it's really a good idea to start observing what consumers are doing on a particular platform before you actually open up. So going back to the point I made earlier about expecting 24-hour access, for example, if you can't meet that demand, and if that's what people expect on the platform, perhaps you shouldn't be on that platform. And that goes into the second piece of advice there, so that you choose carefully when you pick you pick an application that is out there, or if that doesn't serve the purpose, then you may also make your own or host it on your own website. As we've talked about in other slides as well, you got to ensure that there is an alignment and that your plan is integrated into your bigger marketing plan. And another key important area here is that social media, and when you are operating on social media, it should really be an access for all and for all employees. It shouldn't be up to some people to create all the content and doing all the social media stuff, while the other one is just going ahead with business as usual. It's social media for and through a business absolutely works best when it's integrated into the business, so that everyone is responsible for it, and that's only achieved by producing a good strategic plan, which is your assignment 1. Now, finally, for this video, Kaplan and Heelan also give some advice about how to be social on social media. They say that you should be active, you should lead, you should create relationships, you should be interesting, which include that you should listen and enable other people to contribute. So you're not interesting if you flog them with the things that you care about. And you also got to be humble and learn how to use the platform, admit mistakes and so forth, which also relates to being unprofessional, and sort of be more personal and fun in that sense. Now that's a great opportunity to write another blog post, look at businesses that have taken that piece of advice too far and been too unprofessional, or perhaps also look at some businesses that are not being unprofessional enough. But yeah, you can play with that and write a good blog post. Be honest is another important area, and for example, Wikipedia is not advertising, so you don't go in there and edit posts about your business to make it sound like something that it's not. And there's another thing that you could potentially blog about businesses that are not being honest on social media and the potential backlash that comes from that. All right, that's all I have for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.